Hi, friends. It's Deanna Willison from Our Blooming Catholic Life. And if you saw Women of Grace today live on EWTN's YouTube or Facebook channel, you know I was speaking about Servant of God John Bradburne as being a mystic. I didn't do a great job of conveying his mysticism when I got to speak to Johnnette, though. So I'm popping on to show you one of the books. This is not the most mystical book either. It's kind of awkward, but this is one of his books that I have not reviewed. I have reviewed and have a number of videos on Servant of God John Bradburne, so you can feel free to just search my channel here for that. What is this one? It is A Life Made of Words, the Poetry and Thought of John Bradburne. It's by David Crystal, who is best known for his books on linguistics and the English language. And he is the man who ended up being tasked, accidentally, of course, or providentially, however you want to look at it, by creating the online database of John's poems. So you can see any of these poems at johnbradburnepoems.com. And any of David's other works, he has his own website, www.davidcrystal.com. And this book is available as print on demand or as an ebook from his website. You can also get it from John Bradburne's Memorial Society website as well. Tongue twisters eventually. What is this book? It is a literary criticism, so it's a little bit different. Let's look at this a little bit here. It's by Crystal Books. He did say it was print on demand, didn't he? It has our table of contents, is mostly how we like it set up, except it's a little difficult to get from some of these chapter numbers over, right? From the chapter over to the page number. I do believe from the setup of this book that it's meant to be read sequentially and not jumped into haphazardly, because also the page numbers are really outside corners, but they're so tiny, and the chapter titles are just so tiny. I think it's meant to be read more sequentially. Let's just look at this page quick. You can see the poems are interspersed completely throughout the book, and they are in a different font as well as inset, so that's easy to see when it's a John Bradburne poem. I love that this book also talks about the conventions. So all poetic extracts are taken from the online database. It gives you that address again. Titles are shown with the original capitalization along with year dates to facilitate searching, as several poems do have the same title. You're going to need to know that date as well if you go online. The only editorial change I've made is sometimes to replace poetic extracts that end with a comma, semicolon, or colon with a period. What else is in this book? There is an introduction both to John Bradburne and somewhat to poetry, to English poetry, and then it's chapters that are really, I don't entirely know if, it doesn't seem to be entirely thematic or set up time-wise. I'm sure this setup makes complete sense to David. I don't know what that is. The first one is Nothing But Gold, and because they're asking, sure, he's written the most lines of poetry in the English language, most prolific poet in the English language. That's how Guinness Book of Records says it. But is it any good? Anybody could just sit and write poetry ad nauseum, right, and say it's good. But so the first chapter is Nothing But Gold. The next one is A Strange Vagabond. So I'm assuming it's going to give you a little bit of history about John. And then My Prose is Worse, with the interlude of Writing Home. There are a number of interludes in various chapters. So I don't know, that's not a convention we use in America, so I'm not sure what that is. Maybe it's common to literary books. I'm not familiar with literary criticism of poetry text. So that could be a normal convention that I'm not sure about. There's a number of them. There are, 45 chapters. There's further listening and reading, which is like a bibliography, but it also includes, there are CDs of John as well, The Thought Expressed, as well as Alive to God. We do have some recordings of John that he made, I think on a cassette recorder, which does come into play in his death, the tape recorder. But also his godson, am I going to say his name right? Philip John Berthoud, and his wife Mary Berthoud, also are on this album. I believe Philip has written the music, and Mary has a lovely, lovely voice. So some of it's actually John's voice, some of it's not. It's just really amazing. This one has topics of England, roaming, Mary, Mother of God, Zimbabwe, and a finale. These ones don't have subtopics, but it does tell you that all of these proceeds, I think for both of them, but definitely this one, all proceeds go to Mutemwa leprosy settlement, where John Bradburne had spent the last 10 years of his life. There's also other books by David Crystal. He has a number of smaller poetry anthologies. If you're looking for an anthology, this is the only one that's poems and pictures. Most of them are just poems. There are a number of biographies on John. The one by Didier Rance was originally written in French. It's translated into English as well, and it has a good bit of English and Zimbabwean history that the other books don't include. It's part of why it's so chunky. It's a much more comprehensive book. Didier is also a secular Franciscan like myself and John Bradburne, Third Order Franciscans. And so he has that angle as well. The French edition has more to it than the English, so if you can read French, go for it. This was one of the original biographies by Father John Dove, who was a good friend of John, and how John ended up at Mutemwa, well, in Africa. We also have a regular newsletter at JBMS. There are small books that some we pass out for free, and then some are a little bit more. This is one of the little free ones, I believe. I mean, this if it's play. Whew. So back to this book. What's in it? You're dying to know? Let's just pick one. Speaking on page 141, it's in the chapter entitled The Sport of Play on Words. It says that he, John, is well aware of his thematic shifts, but sees them as yet another example of language at play. He talks about them in an exchange with a friend, Stephen King, hence the pun in the first line. Of such a kingly brain as Bradburne craves, I am intent that here shall make its home each fabulously happy palindrome. I like the sound of words at play. For me, they spark off each other, by ear, you see. I tend to write the bulk of what I do, and words than acts are better for who's. And catenation in non sequiturs lulls the mulled sense, while spirits dull it stirs. With your permission, I will send a clump of further verse, else destined for the dumb. And that is from Letter to Stephen King, March 1977. And it's very true, friends. John Bradburne tended to write everything in poetry. Letters home, all sorts of things. He wrote everything in poetry. And that's one of the reasons we have so many lines. There is a note down here that catenation, I don't know if I'm saying it right, is an interesting word, a chaining of non sequiturs. This suggests that thematic shifting is of greater significance than being only the result of an interruption. Interesting. Occasionally in John's poetry, there's a British word that doesn't come through to American English quite the same. We had just had that whole retreat on silence for our 7 sisters at our parish. And here's a little interlude. Well, it's an entire poem. It is on pages 166 and 167. A Ballad of Desire for Interior Silence, 1975. Many a rhymester lacks the poet's soul. A pedagogue who rhymes is 10 times worse for breaking off from his prosaic role. Punish no punster if he scores a goal, or makes you gayer for his play on words. A nightmare may bring forth a winning foal of sheer relief in waking to the birds. A dam may bear relation to a curse, if unblessed mother of an unblessed role. Even Eve's offspring odd is none the worse, being absolved by a priest in purple stole. Do re mi fa, at Paschal font we goal, and happy fault are our exultant words, leading to Alleluia freed we troll, of sheer relief in waking to the birds. My bedward now bemused, you may coerce, never unless caresser of my soul, as only she who made of glee is nurse. Re-rhyme and verse, which is my player's role, though type upon this page is black as coal. Some nigger said Formosa are the words of Odd's gold fish emerging from a bowl, of sheer relief in waking to the birds. Envoy prince in principio, seas did unshoal, fish clearly neither queers nor muir absurds, to winged creatures preaching to the whole, of sheer relief in waking to the birds. And you like, there's constantly like Latin interspersed in the poems and little puns. And it's funny because he's mystical and theological at the same time. How does he do it? He has you kind of laughing at his little joke, and then there's a little bit of theology, and then you're laughing and a little bit of theology. I think one of the great things that is a great talent of John, that he is a mystic, but he's approachable, right? Over here, it says on page 170, he searches for the best metaphors and similes to capture his poetic relationship. He calls her the typist queen in Canticum Novum in 1968, Lyrical Nurse in Nun 1970, Verse Maid, a ballad of the sign a shine at 9 p.m. 1975, Tutelary Mistress, Agera 1979. The interaction is like a game, and here's another poem. This is like playing chess with God, a game with which mankind to play I never knew. Blessed is he who has our blessed dame beside him saying what he ought to do, which move to make to take this master Jew, trebly or doubly by. Checkmate, I'm lost, in melody with harmony embossed. And that's Joseph's Perhelion, 1977. And one of his favorite images for himself comes from the medieval court. See further on chapter 38. He is his mistress's page. She'll play her page as a guitar, he writes in Ballad of a Being Possessed, 1975. He likes it not only for its ancient resonance, but because it is a fruitful source of puns. The written page in the name of the character Mistress Page in Shakespeare's The Merry Wives of Windsor. Assuredly, re-enters none, his earthly mother's womb. Yet heavenly there is a one, in whom I work at loom, of typing on this mistress page, upon a problem we engage. And that's from Canticum Novum, 1968. But whatever the image, the result is fulsomely and repeatedly acknowledged. From fold of bed and cot I fled this morn, and sped to type which she had said and told. I'm not going to give you the poems here. I'm just going to read the poems, the little stanzas. Each morning I may clearly read her thoughts, writ in epistle and gospel for the day, and while I freely read, her truth supports my meditation and directs my way. And what I'll endeavor to do in the lines that follow a page as my mistress designs is to type in total abandonment sure as to what to say next, that the text may be pure. The hand I hold with hers and prod, she need not to me to type with glee her view. All he has to do is wait a while, here listening to the sounds of the village. Unpensive I took up my pen that toys with passing sound till it is bound to yield fruit to the flute of fancy she employs. My muse's inspiration wins the field. And you can totally tell this chapter is Maria wrote it with me. Who is Maria? I think we all know who he is referring to. And that's part of John's story that you're going to find and when you read John's biography and more spiritual writings, that he had a mystical marriage with her. And his whole spirituality, how Mary originally came to him as part of his conversion story. Oh my gosh, you have to read it all. Okay, I'm going to read you one more little bit here from 172. Mary is the medium, in traditional terminology, mediatrix, of his message, but he also repeatedly acknowledges that God, and he has in parentheses Pan, with an allusion to the piper of Greek antiquity, is the true originator. Upset that the arrival of visitors is going to take up his writing time. He imagines God's reply. Now remember, John Bradburne was working at Metemwa. I don't know if at this point, 74. I think yes, in 74, he was already at Metemwa, the leprosy colony, where he took care of them as friend, brother, nursemaid, mother, father, spiritual director. He was all of those things and much more to these people. And he always did want time to write his poetry. Remember, he thought he was going to go away to that cave in Africa. And that didn't work out, because even when he was in a little room in the middle of nowhere, people would seek him out. And so he went to Metemwa. And the beauty is, when people would seek him out at Metemwa, he could get things for his friends while he was there, whether it was food or medicine. You know, he could share those things with them. So getting visitors there could be a blessing, because he would get things that he needed, but it would also cut into his meditation time. So let's see here what this says. It's from Monday morning, 1974. Seeing that van, I pray to Pan for grace, albeit giving answer in advance. Thus pipes he helpfully, think not henceforth of what you've got to say, stay in a trance, typing my poetry. In Ode to the Well of Life, 1977, he asks a theological question in one stanza, while in the next anticipating an answer. Should Piping Pan reply, I'd write it down as I am doing till the pot for coffee boils. Okay, friends, you've seen a little bit of insight into Servant of God, John Bradburne. Can you be a mystic in this day and age while in active ministry service to the church? Yeah. Even as a secular? Yeah. Right? It's possible. And that's part of what I love about John Bradburne is he makes it accessible. His sense of humor, and that's probably David picked this picture for the book. The picture in the prayer card's much more serious, isn't it? But here he is laughing and enjoying life even while he's deeply lost in mysticism. It's just such a beautiful gift, and one that, I pray that I could be blessed with one day as well. Oh, did I show you the back of the book? The back of the book does have that list. I was showing you some of the books already. There's also a table of contents. What does that look like? I'll give you the E's just as an example. Eagle poems, ecology, Christian, ecumenism, Edmund Rich, Saint, education poems, Eliot, T.S., emoji, Empson, William, English language praised, enjambment, environmental poems, envoy, Erskine, Henry, and exercise poems. You really have quite the mix here. Oh my goodness, friends. It's lovely. So David Crystal goes into the linguistic aspects. He analyzes the poetry. He analyzes how and when it was written, why it was written, so many great topics. So it is a decent sized book. There's, like I say, there's 416 pages all told. It's no slight analysis. This is a deep analysis. And if you don't understand the letter metaphor here, you need to get the book. You need to get it. Servant of God, John Bradburne, pray for us. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us. And friends, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his light to shine upon you and to be gracious unto you. And may the good Lord bless you. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen.